If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum leadership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. I love Anchor because it's really easy to use, very accessible to record your podcast, and has excellent sound quality. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello, I am Jennifer Lynn Purcell, aka Opportunity Butterfly, bringing to you a living with an invisible learning challenge where we will discuss the challenges and triumphs of those with NLD. I don't know if you're a new listener or not, but I would like to share with you where I get most of my articles for this podcast. I've recently learned about a nonprofit that I would really like to help. It's the NVLD project. In addition to doing research on NVLD and working to get it back on the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, that is the DSM, they provide support groups for those with NVLD. You can find the NVLD project at www.nvld.org. All proceeds from this podcast and the ads will go towards the NVLD project. I will include the link for this in the description of the podcast. Please go to livingwithnld.com to learn more about my podcast. Also, I would like to announce that I now have created a YouTube channel for this podcast. I will post the link for this in the description for you. Hi, so today's episode is about seeing the big picture with managing finances. So when one has NLD, it's difficult to see the big picture because we tend to focus on the small details in life. The following quote is from Understanding Nonverbal Learning Disabilities, which is by understood.org, and it describes what people with NLD have challenge with doing. Abstract thinking, trouble with reading comprehension and understanding the big picture. Kids may be good at memorizing details, but not at understanding the larger concepts behind them. They may also have trouble organizing their thoughts, end quote. I can definitely relate to this because for me, since I have NLD, it's not natural for me to see the big picture of things. It's more natural for me to see the small details, or what my family likes to call the ladybugs, not the forest, branches, or trees. This does not mean that I can't train my mind to see the big picture, though. I have been doing this by helping myself learn how to manage my money. I used to have a decent amount of credit card debt from irresponsible spending, but I was able to pay it all off earlier this year. It felt really good to get rid of the debt, even though it wasn't as bad as student loan debt would be for people who have that. It still felt heavy for me to have that debt. Once it was gone, that heaviness and weight was lifted off my shoulders. This has continued to happen because I have been able to stay out of debt since I paid it off. I want to congratulate anyone else that has been able to do this same task, whether it's from irresponsible spending, student loan debt, or any other kind of debt. If you have paid it off and kept yourself debt-free since then, good for you. And if you've been saving money for paying that debt off while living on your own, I also want to acknowledge that because I can imagine that isn't easy to do. So ever since I paid it off, I've been saving my paychecks towards retirement, emergency, car insurance, and a deposit for my first place of my own. I've been saving 10% of my paycheck for retirement in a Roth IRA. I've been saving 15% towards rent, 20% towards car insurance, and 25% towards emergency funds. I was able to achieve my goal of saving enough money for an apartment that would cost $21,000 for a deposit. Consequently, I increased my percentages for my other areas of saving each by 15%. I also reimburse my parents for prescriptions and toiletries that they buy me. This helps me be aware of what those things cost. It also helps me be aware of what money I have left over to save. I wouldn't have been inspired to do any of these practices if I hadn't grown up in a household that didn't have frugal spending practices. I also took a personal finance class in college that helped me learn many things that I didn't know. I took this class as a recommendation from my older brother who also went to UC Berkeley. I learned many things in this class, such as the difference between a debit and credit card, about loans, bonds, Roth IRAs, 401ks, and traditional Roth IRAs. They should have this class in high school because not everyone attends college. And if you want to know, the book in that class that I read was called The Missing Link by Fred Selinger. I will put that title in the description so that you can maybe get that book. So here is another article titled Living Independently with Nonverbal Learning Disability by Lemmy, who has a PhD. And she talks about the challenges that NVLD presents when her daughter tries to live on her own and goes to get her master's. Quote, other challenges include managing her budget. Unlike others with NVLD, math is not a challenge for her. However, budgeting her money is not the easiest thing for her to do. This is a constant, and she has to pay close attention to the money she has. She has managed to stay within her limits because she has to, but she does not always plan optimally. End quote. I remember when I was in college, I had challenges with setting limits on how I would spend money. Often I would go over my monthly allowance in the first 2 years of college, but once I got a better understanding of the value of money and things, I was able to control my spending better, especially when I was living in my apartment with a couple of girls and my dog. I needed to learn how to take care of myself and my dog Truffles. If I tried to keep track of what I was spending while in the store and make sure that it was a necessity, then it made it easier for me to not overspend on my budget. So what I was trying to say there is when I went grocery shopping, I would keep track of what I was spending because I would want to make sure that I was buying things that I only needed and not try and buy extra things that I might not have needed. Because I was trying to really train my mind not to overspend. And I also checked what was in my checking account before I would buy anything. That way I'd be aware of what I had in there. And I would try to think of, okay, what am I going to need for the rest of the month? So that I would be aware of how much money I might need for those things. Which was kind of hard to do for somebody who has NLD because you're trying to plan ahead and you might not know exactly what you need to plan ahead for. Executive functioning, not a thing that comes naturally to us. Also, once I started boarding at the co-ops for food, it got easier for me to manage my monthly budget because I could get most, if not all, of what I needed from there for the month. If they didn't have something I wanted, I would buy it from the store if it was something that I really thought I needed, like toiletries, since that is a necessity. And I would go to the co-ops for dinner each night and was able to save my leftovers for lunch the next day. This helped me save time and money because then I didn't have to worry about having food for lunch the next day. As long as I brought the container of leftovers with me in my backpack for my afternoon class, I was set for lunch. I would do a similar thing with breakfast. I would fix it before leaving from my morning class and often eat it as I was walking to class. I would do the same thing with snacks that I may want to have with me on campus. I would put them in my backpack. That way I wouldn't have to spend money on that or go back to my apartment for it. It was much easier for me to stay focused in my classes if I wasn't hungry or thirsty while I was in them. My brother also went to UC Berkeley, and ever since he graduated from there in 2013, he has been living on his own and has been able to manage his finances really well because he created a budget that works well for him. He has been my inspiration to do better with managing my money. He helped me with creating my own budget that I have been using while I live with my parents. I have lived with my parents since I graduated from college in 2018 because I have NLD. I need more preparation for living on my own than neurotypicals do. I have set $100 as a monthly budget for spending. Since I've been out of debt, there has only been a couple of months that I exceeded that amount. I did that because I had a personal thing come up, like going to a doctor's appointment. I also started the website for this podcast, but those expenses were definitely worth it. They were not irresponsible or impulsive as I had done before I paid off my debt. And I also want to tell you that I'm trying to save money for a new car, I should say. And I think I'm doing quite well with it. I'm looking at options that I want to buy, that I might want to get for a car. And I'm looking at the different safety features I might want to have, like a backup camera and lane assist and lane departure assist. And if I want parking assist or if I want brake assist. And all of those can add onto the price. So originally $10,000 was my goal, but now it's $15K because I realized that I was going to need to save a little bit more money than I thought. So I'm going to save about $12,000 and 13,000 actually, and then I'll sell my car and hopefully that will get me to 15K from there. So that's something else that helps you think about a big picture with saving money, because you're trying to think ahead. Okay, what would I need in this vehicle that will make me safe and ultimately others safe that are going to be on the road and will also last a long time, because I want to get an electrical vehicle. I want the battery to last a long time. So I want to try to get one that's going to last 8 or 10 years. And that's either going to be a Nissan Leaf or a Chevy Volt, unless I find something else that's going to be better. So yeah, that's what I'm looking into. And, I have a Toyota Prius right now, but Prius doesn't have a fully electric car yet. But they might by the time I have the money. So if they do, I'm going to go with that if the battery lasts 8 to 10 years. So, I have options, which is good. It's always good to have options. So, whether it's trying to deal with doing better with managing finances or seeing the big picture, I and others who have NLD still struggle with these issues today. And as I wrap up, there are some things I would like to share with you. I do have a website that I recently created for this podcast, and I would love to know what is a challenge you usually have when you're trying to do better with managing money and seeing the big picture. And if you want to comment on the episode on the website, you can do that because it's set up as a blog. And please share it at the level of comfortability that you have. You don't have to overshare, you can undershare. If you're listening on Spotify, you can send me an email at livingwithnld@gmail.com, or you can go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review with the answer to that question. And again, the question was, what challenge do you have when you're managing money or seeing the big picture? You can answer both if you want. And I would suggest that you try to find a book that might help you with managing finances or seeing the big picture. If you don't have somebody to help you with that. But if you do have somebody to help you with that, that's probably the next best thing to a book. So I hope you enjoyed learning something new today and listening today. And I will talk to you next Friday. Bye. As I wrap up, there are some things I would like to share with you. I do have a website for this podcast. It is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook and Instagram page for this podcast. It is called Living with NLD. I will include the links for those in the description. In conclusion, I would like to hear from my audience. If you know individuals with NLD that I could interview for this podcast, please email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com. What are you interested in learning about NLD? I know I'm not an expert, but I do know I have the living experience of having it. I would like you to practice journaling about your gifts and differences. Also see if there is a way that you can make that difference become easier for you to do than it originally was. Thank you for listening today, and please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to it. Thank you. Bye.